Hello, guys. Welcome back to Life's Deceit podcast with me, your girl, Jen Simpson. Today's conversation is not for the faint, guys. So I hope you're ready. You have your favorite snack, your drink, and you're ready to wind down with me and connect deep in the spirit. Keep signing that petition, please. Here it is below. Please sign. This conversation today is for the ones brave enough to face the truth. We're gonna face the truth together, guys, and really deep dive into some things that we are so afraid to talk about still. This topic is an important topic that we need to really dissect and dig deeper into, and why I started this petition that I need you guys to help me fulfill. I'm sitting today with Sonny Von Cleveland. Sonny is not only an author, he's a speaker and a survivor. He has written a book that is so loud, fierce, and bold. Hey, White Boy! That's the title of the book. Hey, White Boy. Conversations of Redemption. I know the book name it sounds intriguing, It's more than just a memoir. It's a map through the darkest chords of trauma, whiteness, prison, and pain. And, when I saw the title of the book, I was like, hey, white boy, like, what does that mean? I cannot wait for us to sit down and listen to Sonny and talk about his path towards healing, accountability, and self-liberation. When we hear people tell their stories, it's like an awakening for us, a deep, heart-piercing liberation that gives us the motivation to say, well, you know what, I have something I've been covering up that I need to heal. Sonny goes from surviving nation, both as a child and in prison, to spending 18 years behind bars. He spent 18 years behind prison. He's gone through so much trauma in his life. From being molested, a male, there's so much stigma on that. Much as a woman, when we go through it, it's like, oh my gosh, we don't want to tell anybody. But a man, that's even harder. Both of them are hard. But Sonny has turned his pain into purpose and his silence into a call for change. This is Sonny's story behind redemption. There's something deeper underneath the surface that I need to heal from and allow myself to become who God called me to be. Sonny Von Cleveland dismantles the comfort of silence to confront hard truths around whiteness, privilege, systematic violence, and the cycle of harm. So guys, thank you again for subscribing to my channel. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button. Send me emails. Leave your comments. Sign the petition. Barrels of Silence. It is for us to demand a public sex offenders list in Jamaica because it is needed with everything that is happening. And remember, you may not live there, you may not be from Jamaica, but everything affects us in some way. And our voices are needed everywhere across the globe to stand between the gaps and to create change. Change only comes about when we make a choice and we stand together. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in with me. Thank you guys for continuing to show me love and grace. So guys, without further ado, please help me welcome and give some love to Sonny Von Cleveland. So hello, Sonny. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? I am doing fantastic, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. People need to hear this stuff. People need healing, right? And my whole life mission has become to help people learn how to use this little thing we have called a voice to heal. And so I try to make myself as available as I can.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be in your presence. And I mean that with the utmost respect.
Thank you.
It was a friend that actually sent me your video. He's like, you got to watch this video. I'm like, okay, I see everybody sitting in a circle. I'm like, what's this going to be? And as I was watching you, I swear I just felt chills run down my body.
All right. When I was 5 years old, I started to get by my uncle. And over the course of the next 6 years of my life, I was by more than 5 men. So when I was 7, I broke into a church and I got charged with a felony and put on probation. And when I got put on probation, all the men me went away. And so when I got off probation, they all came back. And so I went and broke the law again and got put on probation again. So my whole life, I continued to go out and break the law. I would purposely go out and catch felonies because this is how I protected myself.
I spent the whole day searching for your name and I had to find you. And,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
crazy.
I know people say, oh, your story is, it's not about the greatness of your story. For me, it's about the fact that you had the courage to heal and want to help other people heal. Because I was in that dark place. I've experienced it, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've come to find that being on the path of helping others to discover self-forgiveness and healing has helped me heal. It's healing is not a one time and done thing, right? Like I constantly am likening it to working out in the weight pit, right? When
Yep.
you first start lifting weights, it sucks, right? The next day hurts. The second day hurts even more. The third day hurts the worst, and it just sucks. But if you keep doing it, it starts hurting less. It still fatigues you when you go get a good workout, but the pain is not there, right? The pain itself is gone. The physical pain is gone. And the weight never gets lighter. You just get stronger. And
Mhm.
it's the same when it comes to healing our emotions, right? Or healing those emotional wounds that are deep inside. You know, a lot of people, you can't see an emotional wound. When we see a physical wound, we're okay, right? Even regardless of how crazy the wound is, we're still okay because we can see it and we see it healing. And so we know it's going to be okay. And when we have these emotional scars and these emotional wounds inside of us, you can't see them. So we don't know if they're getting better. We think that they're getting better, or we think that they're not. We don't know. We can't see it. So people are constantly trying to heal and fix that internal invisible wound with a physical, visible thing: drugs, sex, alcohol, gambling. They try to use one of these tangible items to fix what's broken inside something that they can't see, when all along your voice is what heals it, something else that you can't see. This is a gift that God gave you to heal the invisible wounds that you can't see. The more you say it, the less it hurts. And so you say it and you say it and you say it until it doesn't hurt anymore. And guess what? That's called healing. The pain never, the wound never goes away. The event, the trauma never goes away. You just get stronger and you're capable of dealing with it. You're capable of picking it up. It'll sometimes fatigue you. Sometimes you'll have tears come up, but you're healed, right?
I love that you said that. And I love how you did that comparison because that is it. Healing is an ongoing journey. I'll tell you this, and I haven't said this in a while, but my mom, oh God, my mom,
Okay,
she
let it out.
has
Let it out.
she
Say it.
has her way and she'll do things to reopen that wound, right? And I've been learning how to deal with her. And when she says I love you, I can't say it back. If I say it back, I feel like I'm doing something bad.
Sure.
Like, it's kind of like you're cheating. You're cheating on your partner. You feel terrible. Like I feel so bad
Sure.
saying I love you to her. And I can't explain to anybody why, but it's because I never healed our relationship.
Sure.
We never
I,
really
I'm
had a bond.
I'm kind of in the same boat with my mother, right? When people read my book or they hear my story, one of the first things they go after is my mother.
Hmm.
Like, what kind of mom is that? And I still talk to my mom to this day. Um, we haven't talked as much in the last couple of years since my book came out. We haven't really talked. I called my mother the day that we put the book to press, and I called her because I wanted a clarification on a timeline. And my wife and I were laying in bed. My mom was on the speakerphone and she said, "But you only put 4 men in the book." She said, "What about the old man that used to give you money? What about my ex boyfriend with the van? What about this guy?" And I was like, shit. Like both of our jaws hit the floor. Like I blocked out these other men that were molesting and abusing me. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, how, as a mother, do you? I mean, I could see one time your child gets molested and you find out. I'm going to chain this kid to the basement floor and feed him bread and water, right? Like nobody's getting near this kid anymore.
Right.
How is it that multiple men over my life, and then even further, I made the mistake in the book. I said I started to get molested by my uncle when I was 5. Turns out I was 3. And they found out that he was me when I was 3, and they swept it under the rug. They got him mental health counseling, and I was no longer allowed to go upstairs at grandma's house. Because if you hear my story, when you read my book, I used to be fascinated with playing with toys on the stairs. And I knew I wasn't allowed upstairs. I didn't know why. I just knew I wasn't. That's why I wasn't allowed upstairs. And I'm like, why was I allowed back in the house?
Yeah.
Why did you sweep it under the rug? And so that created a bit of a disconnect between me and my mother. And my mother sees everything that I do. So she's going to see this as well. And this is something that I've told her. It's not my responsibility to protect you from the reality of my truth. And that's something that I try to instill and teach to people that are dealing with trauma. Stop caring what somebody else is going to think. There's so many people that won't speak their trauma because somebody else is alive.
Right.
And it's like, that's the craziest logic to not healing and speaking your truth ever. You are willingly holding that trauma and holding yourself hostage because you don't want your mom to know. That's not your responsibility. That's not your problem, right? Stop protecting the ones that weren't there to protect you. You don't need to do that. And so it's funny, after this video came out, I got a message from my cousin who I haven't talked to in 30 years, 35 years. And he comes out and he says, dude, thank you so much for sharing and being strong enough to speak up, blah, blah, blah. And I texted him back, or he messaged me on Instagram. And I messaged him back and I said, I don't know if my Uncle Mike ever abused you too, but if he did, you can always tell me about it. The door's open. And what he sent me back was just revolting. and I can't help but look at my mother in a bit of a different light. Had you said something when I was 3, had you taken action and done something when I was 3 years old, my cousin might have been spared. I might have been spared. My brother might have been spared. All the other cousins that this man diddled might have been spared because you chose not to make that decision. God, it's just, it's hard for me to sit with, right? It is very hard to sit with and then still associate and talk to my mother. So I get where you're coming from.
I love you for all of that. Because as I'm listening to you talk, it's like, okay, I kept asking, why am I feeling this nervousness in my spirit to talk to you? Why do I get this bubbly feeling? And my spirit is like, I feel like a weight on me, right? And
Yeah.
I've never felt this before. So I
Yeah.
talked to my pocket. I'm like, I don't know why I feel like this. She prayed for me before I came on here. And now as I'm talking to you, you just helped me in a way that I didn't even know that I needed.
Yeah, listen,
Because
you can't allow that. You can still have a relationship with your mother.
yeah.
It's not your choice. It becomes her choice at that point. But if your mother doesn't want to have a relationship with you because you needed to heal your trauma by speaking your truth, that is not your problem. That's not your problem. That's her problem. And this is your life. She's not the one that's dealing with your pain. You are. You're the only one dealing with your pain, except the people that are a byproduct of your actions from dealing with that pain. Because we take it out on the people that we love the most, right? And we don't even mean to do it. We do, because that innate harm and trauma and pain has to have an outlet. The body will keep the score, right? If you don't work through it, it will manifest in diabetes, it will manifest in cancer or some other type of breakdown in the body, because the body's not designed to hold that. And so it will manifest itself in your body and in your actions, and you'll inadvertently treat someone else less than what you would normally treat them, or not with the love and kindness and respect that you would normally treat people, because you're dealing with this inner toxicity that's dying to get out. Right?
Thank you, Sonny. because last week she called me. She says that one of my interviews, she's like, "Is this you on the radio?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I had an interview with somebody. And I'm like, what are you calling me about? She's like, "Listen, is this you?" I'm like, "Where did you get it from?" She said, she just said, "Play something," and it started playing me. And I'm like, "You and," but you know what? After that, she's been calling every second, texting me like crazy. It's too
Guilt
much.
is
It's over. It's guilt. It's overbearing.
right. That's
Like,
guilt.
but it's guilt. And
Yeah.
I'm, maybe that guilt will lead to something else for her.
Yeah. And
That's
one of the things that I think that need to be addressed in this life is also vicarious trauma, right? Where, it's traumatic for a mother to discover that her child is being abused.
Mhm.
And while she has to put on this fierce mom face and protect her child, and in most cases, mom's going to do it. Mom's going to step up and protect their child. And this child is now broken and distraught and traumatized, and mom's trying to heal it. A lot of times we don't take in the vicarious trauma that mom is experiencing or dad is experiencing, finding out that this happened to your child.
Mhm.
And they often don't get to heal that trauma that they've endured by seeing something so precious to them being abused and traumatized in that manner. And so that ultimately can manifest itself into guilt, where mom might feel responsible for what happened to you, even though she wasn't implicit in what happened to you. She may feel that you didn't heal and it's my fault because I didn't guide my child towards healing. And then mom is now riddled with guilt. And the ego wants to protect the mind from shame, and so she won't come out and just say, I feel guilty that happened to you, I feel like I'm somehow culpable or responsible. Instead, she's going to be like, I can't believe you did that, I can't believe you're saying that, why would you say that? Right?
Mhm.
Again,
Mhm.
the toxicity in the body makes the human respond to things in ways they normally wouldn't respond because that toxicity exists, right?
Right, right. I just love her, and that's all I can do. And that's all that people can do, is just love them and work on
Forgive.
yourself, heal, and forgive.
Forgiveness is the secret sauce, right? I forgive anybody that has ever done anything wrong to me and transgressed me, not because you need it, but because I need it.
Yeah.
I don't forgive you so that you are free of your deeds or your guilt. I forgive you because that allows the shackle to come off of me, and it
Yes.
doesn't hold me hostage anymore, because if I hold that resentment, then I'm keeping that trauma alive inside of me. And
Yes.
so even if I surfacely look like I'm healed or I'm better, I'm holding this grudge because I don't forgive whoever violated me. I can't forgive that. I can never forgive that. Well, then you can never heal because there's still a seed of that trauma alive in you that you're holding.
Mhm.
You got to let it go.
And you let it go.
I let it go.
And
I kicked it out. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't pay rent. You got to go.
you got to go. And before the author, before the activist, who was Sunny?
Oh man, well, I guess what before I started writing my book and that
Yeah,
after
take
prison and before the book.
before all of that, I want you to take us back to your childhood, where you're from, how you were raised, what was the dynamic? I know you talked a little bit about your mom, but what was it like growing up in your household, sibling
I,
wise, all that?
it was very smoke and mirrors, right? It was on the surface it looked like, a struggling single mom raising two mischievous boys that were constantly getting into trouble, and mom is working two jobs and struggling and doing everything she can to make ends meet and keep food on the table. But looking back at it as an adult, I see the veil has been lifted and I see what it is now, right? Mom was more into partying and drugs and alcohol and, government cheese and government peanut butter. And I mean, anybody that's been through poverty, we all remember the government peanut butter in the white jar, right? That had the aluminum insiding, and peanut butter was pretty good. The government cheese, the block, was pretty good. Food stamps that came in multiple colors. What I think the $1 was brown, and then there's the blue $5 bill and the red 20, and with that level of poverty, and we grew up in this small town in Carson City and Crystal, Michigan. We bounced around a lot, so we lost the home often. My mom had just a lot of different boyfriends, and so there was a lot of moving, but we generally stayed in the same area. So my schooling was kind of consistent. And we used to go to my grandma's house all the time. Like my grandma lived in a couple towns down the way, 15, 20 minutes outside of town. And outside of the abuse that I was experiencing in my life, my life was spent in closets, listening to music, in the woods, playing with imaginary friends, or playing of Nintendo if I could get my hands on it. Right. Like I was a very reclusive kid that was innately extrovert, but traumatically introverted because of what had happened to me. I was a very outgoing, some of my favorite memories, my mom she was a singer songwriter, used to play guitar all the time. And I would just dance and sing with her. And I love it. And everything from Jimmy Buffett to White Snake to Harry Chapin to, Etta James. And I mean, it was just such an eclectic collection of music, and music became my life. And that was the time that it almost felt like life was normal and happy, because my mom wasn't a very happy individual most of the time. And she was dealing with a lot of her own pain and trauma that she never healed. And so again, that manifests off into your children. Children observe and feel more than they listen, right? They don't really listen. And we got into trouble all the time. And again, because, I discovered crime when I was 7 years old. My brother and I broke into a church, and we were charged with felonies in 1988. And this is where the whole story just kind of takes a sharp left, right? And a lot of people are like, no, nobody gets charged with a felony at 7. First of all, I don't care if you believe me or not. It doesn't matter. And that's another one of the big things that I try to teach people. People are going to say that you're lying. They're going to say you're seeking attention. Your truth doesn't hinge on somebody else's belief. If they don't, I don't care if you don't believe it. I was there and I know. So in 1988, I'm charged with a felony. I get put on 60 days probation in Montcalm County, Michigan by the Honorable Judge Edward L. Skinner. And when I got put on probation, for some reason or what, the dudes just stopped me. They went away. And I get asked a lot, well, why would getting in trouble and getting on probation protect you? I don't know. I didn't go back and ask them, like, hey, why didn't you while I was on probation? They just did. They were gone. And so in my young mind, I kept breaking the law because it became my safety net, right? I keep getting into trouble. I get an ass whooping from my mom. I get grounded, but I'm safe, right? Like nobody's coming around. But that became the course of my life. So a lot of my brother and I were constantly breaking them into stuff, getting into trouble. And my mom, I distinctly recall, telling us how difficult we're making life for her because she can't have the career that she wanted. She can't go back to school and get a degree or something to go on and get a better career because she's always has to be home with us and always has to pay court fines and attorney fees and all this stuff for us. And so as a child, we absorbed that obviously and felt like bad kids. And I was already this really reclusive kid. I was a huge target for bullies in school because as an abused child, I was trying to find ways to make myself as small as possible. And so I wouldn't shower. I had really poor hygiene. And I wanted people to want to avoid me and stay away from me, which never seemed to work, which is insane. So that made me a really big target for bullies, and I was picked on a lot. I was ruthlessly beaten in school a lot. Like I had my nose shattered on the school bus by a guy named Troy Tissue, who I'm friends with on Facebook to this day. Right? I've made some great amends with some of these people that I have found from my past, like my buddy Aaron, who he punched me one time so hard I was on life support twice from this one incident and in the hospital from him socking me so hard in my face. But this was kind of my life. Like I was beaten up all the time and I internalized it, right? Like for me, that kind of pain, like I could take physical pain. That didn't bother me so much because internally I was just being traumatized. And by the time I was 15 years old, I mean, I had 12 felonies on my record. My brother was taken away when I was like 13. And I mean, I idolized my brother. This guy was my world. And he was taken. We stole my mom's car and went to Chicago. We were like, we're done with this life. We grabbed up our Boys to Men's tapes and got in the cars and we took off. That was right when I'll Make Love to You dropped. And it was like the hottest song in the country, right? Like it's we got that tape, and we're riding in my mom's Escort. It's a stick shift. My brother's driving. I don't know how to drive this thing. I'm 12 years old. And we got busted in Chicago. We made it all the way to Hodgkins, Illinois, which is like a suburb of Chicago, I think. And we get pulled over and get arrested. And that's the last time I saw my brother until I was 21. Like he just left, and he got put in detention, and he started escaping from detention, and his life was gone. And I started to drink, and I started to get into drugs, and I started to get into sex 12, 13 years old. And I was still trying to hide this shame of what had happened to me, except now I'm a young man that's coming into puberty and experiencing hormones, but I've already had my vision of sexual maturity has been diminished and skewed because of the abuse that I'm in. So I don't really know how to navigate. And it really just took me to a very dark place. And then by the time I was 16, I had some more felonies. I went in, it was 17 days after I turned 16 on July 25th, 1997. And the judge had enough. And he was like, you know what? I've never taken you away. You've never been put in detention, none of that stuff. But this is it. I'm done. He bound me over to adult court. They gave me initially 6 months in the county jail and then pulled me back in constantly for these new charges. And I remember distinctly sitting in there, and he said, you know, I'm giving you 24 to 60 months in the Michigan Department of Corrections. And I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, what does that mean? I'm used to hearing like, you got, you know, a year, or you get 3 years or 5 years. It just didn't register. And I look at my lawyer, I'm like, what is that? And he's like, he just sent you to prison. I'm like, shit, like prison? Like, yeah. And I'm like, wow. And of course, after the day that I had gotten arrested originally and sent to jail, my mom came to visit me and was like, so I'm leaving state. You're going to be here, and I'm going to leave state with my boyfriend. We're going to go to South Carolina. And so I had to walk all this on my own. And I mean, I was terrified. Like, well, I don't know all I've seen is like Shawshank Redemption and Bad Boys. And like, that's prison in my mind. Like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy. And you know, and I went to prison. I went to Riverside County, and it's mind blowing to take someone from the environment they're from. I'm this small town country kid from the middle of Michigan. And you put me, we had one black family in my neighborhood, right? And they owned the golf cart. And I mean, I was friends with all of them, loved them to death, right? We were all great friends. I loved Mexicans because I started working at a tree farm when I was like 13, and they were just the kindest people in the world. They took me in, they fed me all this hot stuff, taught me all the bad words in Spanish, and I loved them. And so I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I'm going to be just fine in here, because even back then you knew that Michigan's kind of different. And when it comes to prison, it's about gangs. It's not about race. In most of these other states, prison is all race. Like in California, it's all race. When you get there, the woods go to the woods, the Mexicans go to the Mexicans, the blacks stay with the blacks. Done.
Yeah.
Michigan's not like that. And so when I go into this thing, I'm like, oh my God. This is where you start to see the systemic racism in the judicial system. Because you go in there was one white guy named Mosquito way down there, and it's all black guys. Wow. And I'm like, oh shit. And they're talking in a language that I can't even understand, right? Like, I don't know, like, what they're saying. Like, what are you saying to me? I don't understand street. You're gonna learn today, right?
You gonna learn today.
And I had no idea. So I was just this terrified kid that went in there, and obviously they sensed that, you know, and so I was there for maybe 5-6 days or whatever, but I was by two guys. They ran into the cell with a knife, and I was very savagely, and something in that moment snapped in me, and I knew, like, I have to do something really violent here. Like, or this is going to be my life. I'm going to be a victim for this entire thing. Like, this is not going to stop. And so I grabbed some pencils and I ran over and I stabbed one of the guys in the face. And I mean, it sounds way more vicious than it is, but I mean, they're just little pencils. So there wasn't a lot of damage, but there was a lot of blood and there was a lot of screaming, and it looked really savage. And I ran it back across the hall. I didn't get caught, didn't get in no trouble. Nobody said anything. but that gave me this level of respect in prison because nobody saw what they had done to me. They just saw this crazy ass white guy that came out here and just stabbed the hell out of this guy.
Yeah.
And that started this path of recruitment to getting into gangs. And it was a very long-winded answer to who I was as a kid, but it
That's
just kind of
okay.
it all just kind of folds into a story, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, and I then got ingratiated into gang life, and that became my life for a long time. And I walked a very dark, hard path.
And I know in the beginning you said that prison became like your hiding place. It was like a safe haven for you. Um, but I want to know what made it different than the outside, where I know you explained in the beginning it was kind of your protection
Yeah,
from
yeah.
these men that were abusing you.
Well, I was never taken away. It was just probation, right?
Mhm.
Like it's this invisible shield that I felt like I had put on me, right? Like what is probation? Right? Probation's really nothing. It's a piece of paper and you're basically grounded, right?
Yeah.
You have to call this probation officer and check in once a month, which at that time, I mean, I'm 7 years old, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. That's mom's responsibility. Mom has
Mhm.
to call the probation officer.
I
My
don't.
son's here, he's fine. I didn't have to do anything. And so for me, it was just an invisible barrier. But something happened. You're on probation, and all of a sudden, I'm not being abused. I'll
Mhm.
take it. um, but then being incarcerated became comfortable for me because I lost who I was as this young, innocent, gregarious, kind kid, and I became this ruthless, violent gangbanger. Right, like I just fell into that culture, and now learned all the words and spoke the language. Right, like I'm
Mhm.
fully ingratiated now, and I mean, most of my violence on the first bit that I was in was with the Aryans, right? They hated me because they thought I was a race traitor because I joined a Mexican gang.
Mhm.
and and so I constantly would go into war with these guys, and there's just so much gang warfare. We opened up the first youth facility in Michigan, a privatized youth facility in Baldwin, and that place was a freaking war zone, man. It was horrible. Within 30 days, it had the most violent assaults on staff, the most violent assaults on inmates than any prison in Michigan. And this thing was 30 days old,
Oh.
right? Like
Mhm.
it was just off the charts. And then, fast forward it to when I'm 21, they just opened the doors and let me out.
Mhm.
And I don't know how to function in this kind of world, right? Because now I've developed this mentality of survival and self-centeredness and loss of compassion, and all I know is this gang warfare mentality, and I took that to the streets with me, right? Like, you gave me $75, like, what's that going to do? I don't know how to apply for a driver's license. I don't know how to apply to rent a home. I don't even know how to fill out an application to get a job. Like, I was never taught any of these things.
Mhm.
And so that $75 lasted all of a half an hour.
So
So
what's
what am I going to
next?
do right?
Mhm.
What am I going to do for money? I still have to eat. What am I going to do? And so I robbed somebody.
Mhm.
It's all I knew. Like, I learned how to do that in there. Like, that robbing people's easy. And now I don't have any COs or anything around out here. By the time you get to a phone and call the cops, because cell phones weren't that prevalent then, what are you going to do? By the
Yeah.
time you get there, I'm going to be long gone. You don't know who I am. Like,
Right.
and so I fell into that mindset, and that became my life for 20 months. I ran the streets. The only reason I lasted 20 months is because I just didn't stop moving. I was all over the country, right? Like, I mean, back and forth to Florida, out to California, Arizona, back, and just everywhere. And and then 20 months later, I was arrested again, charged with 15 more felonies, a bunch of gun charges, home invasion charges, robbery charges. And I thought my life was over, right? Like, they gave me another 12 years after a whole bunch of negotiation, 12 more years, two kids, heading back to prison. And when I got there, it was comfortable. Like, oh man, I can breathe, right?
Yes.
Like, out here in the streets, I felt like such a caveman. I felt like this guy that was just out of place. Like, I'm destined to either die or go back to prison anyway. So I'm going to try to get to either one of those as quick as possible.
Right.
And it was uncomfortable living in the free world.
You know,
And
I've
so,
heard people say that before, that coming. They prefer to be in prison because that's what they know. That's their usual. They know that life, but
There's
out in the
so many
world,
guys that do that,
yeah,
especially in Michigan, because it's freezing in the wintertime. And a lot of these guys are homeless. They don't have any options to what to do. So they think that they don't. So they will get arrested in, August and September and get a parole violation and have to go back for 6 months.
right.
Well, that just happens to be perfect during winter, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
spring hits and they get a parole and they go back out into the streets and they do the same thing and they're just constantly back and they don't commit any new crazy crimes. They just violate their parole so they can keep coming back and do a little 6-month laydown. And it's such a waste of life to see that these men and women think that they don't have another option.
Right.
And but being in that environment also numbs you to giving a shit what anybody else is going through, to think about what anybody else is dealing with, because you're just on hyper alert 24 hours a day. You're constantly looking over your shoulder and worried about your own ass, to not have the capacity to worry about somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you, because I know a lot of people, it's a case of people just writing them off and saying, well, you know what, you have this criminal record so long, I don't want nothing to do with you. But for somebody who really wants to change their life and it's hard and they're struggling with it, what advice would you give to them in terms of finding somebody who can help them on that path?
Use your voice, right? Own it.
Mhm.
Go in. I've my felonies, and I've got 35 on my record. My wife and I pulled up my record because you can just pay for it and have it pulled out. There's 35 felonies on this thing,
Right.
and 18 years in prison, and I've never once been turned down, except recently. Ooh, it's a whole nother story. I've never been held back from anything because of my felonies, and it's I within 5 minutes of knowing me, whether it's a job or anything, I'm going to tell you what I've been through in my life, because I want you to be prepared for the person that I am. I'm very outgoing. I'm very adamant. I'm very uh, communicative, and I'm also hyper aware of my appearance, and it can be aggressive looking. I mean, I have
No.
tattoos. All these tattoos. I'm 6'6". I'm not a small guy. I understand that I have an imposing presence, and I do my best to take people off of alert immediately, right? And so, but I also want you to know who you're dealing with, right? And know that who I was is not who I am. And I constantly try to use just about every interaction I have to inspire people to know that people change, right? The whole leopards don't change their spots thing is crap, right?
Right.
Like, you can change your life at the drop of a hat if you want to. It's one of the most profound lessons I learned in solitary confinement, was that we get to choose our personality. You don't have to be a certain way, right? So you have people that are thinking, oh, that's just the way I am. It's just my personality. No, that's who you choose to be. You choose to be that person, right? You don't have to be any way. And so my advice to them would be to go in there and own it and say, listen, man, you're going to find this out and this out. And even if you don't find it out, I'm going to tell you, this is my life. This is what I went through. And I came to this point where I realized enough is enough and I've got to change it. And most human beings are good people. There are some real evil people in the world. But on the overall, most people are kind and compassionate and caring. And when they see that you come at them with an authentic, remorseful approach, they're more receptive to that, right? And they're gonna give you a shot, right? I mean, I've gone everywhere from driving Uber, working McDonald's, to having a 6-figure corporate job for the largest staffing company in Ohio, where I had my own office. Like, nothing can hold you back unless you accept what you allow, right? When you allow something to be a roadblock, it will be a roadblock.
Yeah. So that's the truth. You hold yourself back if you allow your story to make you believe that you can't get to where you can truly be. That's what holds you back.
The whole world just saw it. You can
Yeah.
even be a president now.
Right?
Right? Guys
I
almost
could be
got
a
more felonies
president,
than
so
I
can
did.
you.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I mean, so if the highest job in our country is available to an ex-felon, why shouldn't any other job?
Right.
You can do anything that you want to do in this lifetime. Sure, there's going to be, you can't go be a kindergarten school teacher, right? But understand what lanes you can fit in. If it's really your passion to be a kindergarten school teacher, you can still volunteer to teach kids. You might not get the career and do it in a school where you want to be, but if the passion is to teach kids, you have a pathway to do that, right? It's just about prioritizing. And I believe that everybody should define your passion and monetize that, right? Whatever it is in life that brings you innate joy, monetize it, because other people are going to consume and pay for watching you live your best life, right? It's contagious when you watch. This is how Hollywood came to be, right? We're seeing these fictitious characters living the lives we dream we could live. And so we pay $5.99 to go to the movie theater. Well, I'm showing my age here. That used to be you could just go to the movies for like $5, but we pay to go see this entertaining content that somehow gives us a visage of a life that we wish we could have, right? And even if it's something crazy that you wouldn't think, but it's that's what it is, right? You can live in it. You can do anything you want.
Absolutely. Hey, white boy. Hey, white boy. Because, when I saw the title, I was like, hey, white boy. And I said that with like so much passion. Yeah. It's confrontational. When people hear the title, they're probably like, hey, white boy, where are you coming off with that? But why?
I knew that name was that title was going to ruffle feathers and get people involved, right?
And I love it. I love the title.
Yeah, I knew that it would spark a conversation, but it's the first thing that Mallory Bay said to me, right? And he would not stop saying it. And it's funny because even when I got out of the hole, and the last thing I said to Mallory Bay was, "Bro, I hate that you call me white boy, man. It's racist. It's mean." He's like, "All right, white boy." And that was the day I accepted it, right? Like it just became a thing. And it's about how we interpret things, right? Like one of the things that I love about Black culture was the way that they've taken such a derogatory term as the N word and have taken it and pivoted that word to be a term of endearment and power and love for each other and friendship. And it's the same concept with white boy. White boy is inherently a racist term, right? Like for all intents and for people that think that I don't know anything about racism, try being a white guy that goes to prison. I've been victimized because I was white. I know what it's like, right? It's not fun and it's not nice. And you also have some very educated African American gentlemen that you cannot use that word, or I don't care if you put the A or the R on it, it's the same offense to them, even if it's another African American using it.
Right.
You don't use that term around me, right? And you have to respect that level of standard as well, right? Exactly. And I don't know, the culture to me became one of the things that I did take away and love about prison was the culture, right? Like you got to, and I'm fascinated by human beings and I'm fascinated by religion and belief systems and where these things came from, right? So Mallory Bay and I, under normal circumstances, because of the gang that I was in, and he's a Moabite, which is a form of Islam. Mm-hmm. And they don't like white people, right? They think we're the devil. And which is ironic that he actually called over and would talk to me, because under normal circumstances, it's like, bro, don't talk to me. We ain't friends, mm-hmm. Right? We can do business, but we ain't hanging out. We ain't friends. And, it was something about the relationship between he and I helped me to see the barriers that we choose to put up and the ones that we're capable of breaking down. Right. And it gave me a love for culture. And now, like, I've seen a lot of culture. I've traveled to Europe. I've traveled to Fiji, and seeing like island cultures and these other cultures. I absolutely love it. Right. It's an amazing thing.
I love it. And I need to ask you, hey, white boy, why this book now? I understand the title. The title is very catchy and it drew me in. Listen, I need a signed copy of that book.
Of course, if you have one, you can ship it to me. I'll sign it and ship it back to you. Or I even once I get more, I'm all sold out. Like the book is flying off the shelves. I can't keep them. I just went and bought a bunch of copies, and I'm sold out already. And but
We're gonna have to work it out offline, but
yeah, and we can
why
totally do that. But I definitely would love to get you a signed copy.
I would really, really love that. And why that book now, and what were you hoping to bring to light to the world, to other people?
So my wife had the idea of the book. I never even thought about writing it down as a book. I never thought of that. Again, I don't really care about accolades or attention and so it just never occurred to me like, I mean, I've got producers and directors that are coming at me now like, "Hey, let's turn that into a movie or let's turn that into a docuseries." And I'm like, I don't care about none of that. Like doing that is not on my priority list because that's for you. It's you just want money. You just seeing dollar signs. I don't, and that's not what drives me. But when I met my wife now, we were both coming off of a very toxic relationships, and we kind of found that solace together in trauma bonding. And it's right in COVID. She was in England and she's in lockdown, and she can't leave, and she's going through a really rough time. She's actually writing her book right now, and oh man, it's going to blow people away. But we're kind of carried each other through that. And when we decided to get here, I sucked at boundaries really bad. I would because of my life, I was so lonely most of my life. When I got out of prison, I started to do music and I was very successful very quickly. And I developed a really large fan base and I got all this attention. And that was kind of intoxicating for somebody that had such a secluded background.
Mhm.
And I didn't have boundaries. I just let everybody in. And then that leads to, a lot of people are really bad people. And uh, it led to a lot of tumultuousness in my prior relationships. And I was constantly on this perpetual apology tour where I'm sorry to everybody. So I let my kids' moms walk all over me. My kids walk all over me. I let everybody get away with everything because I'm in this perpetual apology tour. And my wife's like, you need to put this down in a book and get it out. Because your life is so crazy that you've lived this life up to this moment. Like it needs to people will learn from what you've gone through. And I didn't think about it that way. I knew I wanted to help teach people and learn people. I've been speaking in juvie halls and all that since I've moved out here to California. I've really gotten involved in that. And I was like, you're right. Okay, let's do it. I don't know the first thing about writing a book. My wife's like, I'll write it. You sit there and I'll interview you and I'll write the book. And so we did. And that was our process for 3 months. We had a very rigid schedule of getting up at 5 a.m., having our coffee, sitting down, and she would have a pad of paper, an iPad, her laptop, and a recording device and sit there and record me and just take notes and just, it's crazy. And she would interview me basically for an hour, and then I would go off. We own a cat cafe here, so I would go off and run the cat cafe, and I would come home and she'd be like, I wrote this today, read it. And then I would read it and go over it and be like, nope, that didn't happen. Yep, that's accurate. Yep, that was good. Nope, that didn't happen that way. Nope, that's got to change. And just kind of edit the process until it was all authentic in me. One of the funny side notes on that is that she always made Mallory Bay sound like this British gangster, right? Because he's from England. So he ends up sounding like this British chap. And I'm like, babe, he didn't sound like that. Like, he's not going to say, oh, leave it out, mate. Like, they just don't say that. So she had to go through and she had to research what a Detroit gangster from the 70s would
Sounded
sound
like.
Right. And so then she's like, I got it. And so, I mean, I kind of guided her on that as well. And she did such a fantastic job at ghostwriting the book for me. I didn't want, I also am a big believer of your past, your pain and your trauma should build your future. It should absolutely grant you a beautiful life. And so monetize it. And I didn't want to go through a traditional publisher because they take you to the bank, right? Like you get 10 cents a book or 30 cents a book.
Yep.
And I'm like, let's build our own publishing company and publish it ourselves. And so knowing that the grind is going to take a lot longer than using traditional publishing. If you use a traditional publisher, they're going to put your book out all over the world and you can hit top 10 lists and all these other accolades that I just don't care about. I'm not afraid to grind for what I want. So put it out. I'll put that thing in my trunk and I'll go around and Jack Canfield it if I have to. And the book came out a year ago. It came out last September of 2024. So the book's been out, or September of 23. So the book's been out for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And, it's finally starting to gain some momentum. And I'm happy about that. But I definitely make more off my book than using a regular publishing house. So I'm happy about that. Right? So that's a good thing.
That was the same avenue for me. I reached out to a publisher and I'm like, no, why am I giving my credits to you for chump chit? No. And when I read back the edits, I was like, oh no, you destroyed my book.
And that's what they do.
That's what they do.
Look, you got to take that out. You got to take that out. But that's reality. That's what happened.
Yeah, no. Don't change my words.
Sensationalize it. This is why I don't work with a lot of the producers and directors that have approached me, right? You want me to sign my story away to you so that you can do what you want with it. One of my really good friends is Rick Wershey, White Boy Rick. And they made a movie about his life. He's the longest serving non-violent criminal in Michigan history. The guy did 30 years for stuff that people get 6 months now. But he was a political prisoner at the end of the day. And Matthew McConaughey, they shot a movie about him. And it was called White Boy Rick. And I remember talking to him, not too long ago. He's been out for a few years now. And we were chatting and he's like, dude, it sucks. They totally got it wrong. And that's what Hollywood does. Yeah. They would take a story like mine and they would sensationalize the living hell out of it and try to make it something that it isn't, to try to cater to their fan base, right? Or as entertainment value. And I'm not willing to let that happen. Again, it's not about followers. It's not about money. It's not about views. It's about learning, because there's real people that are out there really hurting. And I'm not telling you how to fix your pain. I'm telling you what I did and how I did it. And if you can relate to something in there and you can pick a piece of that up and it can help you in the slightest, that's why I did it.
Right.
Right.
I agree. You talk about redemption, not as a clean slate, but as a conscious reconstruction.
Sure.
How do you define redemption after everything you've lived through?
So I think the word redemption has been heavily Christianized. And so people constantly think of like Christ the Redeemer. But redemption just means getting back something that was lost. Right. So from the Christian perspective, it means regaining your good standing with God. Right. Getting rid of your sin. But it literally, you redeem points on a credit card when you use a credit card. Right. So to redeem something means to get something back. And when you are violated, traumatized, or abused, you have lost this innate sense of pure love that I think every human being is born with. I think we are all born of this vibrational power of love. Like, you've never seen a hateful baby, right? Yeah. Like babies are pure love. They come out laughing, smiling, happy, that belly laugh until it's broken. And some of them, it gets broken very quickly, very early. And some of them, it takes longer. But at some point, inevitably, that pure love is broken. And we spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to that state of pure love, to redeem that state. We're trying to get that back. And so for me, conversations of redemption is about redeeming that quality of love, about getting back to a place of inner peace and love and kindness with yourself. That's redemption to me.
Yeah. And I think you hit redemption when you're in solitary confinement.
Facts.
And I know you brought it up a little bit, but in your book, you talk about that. There's a powerful section in the books. I got to, I found that book because I wanted the physical, but I'm going to get the physical. And you talk about that.
The Kindle version?
Yes.
love it. I
And you
love
talk
it.
about your solitary for confinement, and not just as a punishment, but transformation. Can you talk about what broke inside you in there